Hello everyone, it's Nick Peters with a gaming theologian, and I affirm the virgin birth. We are going to be continuing Kid Icarus. I've had to use save states tonight. Let's ask the question so many people ask about. Will your murderer be in heaven? Well, that certainly sounds like an odd question to ask, since a lot of you saying, well, I personally hope I never get murdered. I don't have any plans on that. And I hope you don't either. But this all begins with a video, a picture I saw years ago with Jesus apparently with a little boy in heaven and saying, "Hey, Tim, do you see that man?" "Yes, I do, Jesus. Who is he?" "Oh, he broke into your house and murdered you and your family years ago, but he repented and now he's up here with us. Let's go say hi." A lot of atheists share this as if it was automatically a negative. And I consider that rather strange. I love how these guys are so easy and they give 10 hearts. I mean, it's got a strong emotional pull. I'll give it that. It seems awful to think that you could be in heaven with someone who murdered you. But the people who share something like this don't understand what forgiveness is all about. Now, in talking on finishing Final Fantasy II, that's what it was, we talked some about atonement. And I said I'd save the complete for a later time. Well, let's talk about that now. And yes, I have Switch controllers, if you're wondering. I hope this one works better. Because I tried the rubbing alcohol thing, and I couldn't get it to work so well. I'm going to see if I can find someone else who can, because, you know, having more can help. But this is also another reason I encourage you all to like, comment, share, and subscribe. But then also support my Patreon, because doing that allows me to get more. And here's Mr. Bubble popping up here. Yes, that's exactly who that looks like to me. Supporting me on Patreon allows me more resources to produce better videos, better games, better supplies for better games. Everything. A little bit for you means a lot to me. But I'd said Final Fantasy IV was an atonement story, and I would talk a whole lot more about atonement later on. So, first off, let's suppose that I was someone, you know, the barrel allows you to carry more via the things that refill one heart when you run out of all your life. Well, not one heart, one life bar, let's say. So, let's suppose first off that you do not have, for instance, a working theory of the atonement. All you know is where Jesus died on the cross, and the Bible says, because of that, I am forgiven. That's enough. You don't have to know how it works for it to work. Because I've seen some atheists, unfortunately you can't go back here. It'd be nice if you could, so I could get that showers down there. I've seen some atheists present with a case as if you don't know how the atonement works, then you don't really have a case for Christianity. Which strikes me as particularly dumb. It's like saying, well, yeah, I've got a very good case that God exists and that Jesus rose from the dead, but geez, if I just don't know how the atonement works, I guess the whole thing doesn't work. And here's another power-up. No, you don't need to know it works. All you need is to know Jesus rose from the dead, God exists, and you trust Him, and you're forgiven. So after all, knowing that Jesus is Lord is not sufficient, because as James said, the demons know that, and they tremble, which should give us some pause, because if we don't tremble at the thought that Jesus is Lord, it could be the demons take it more seriously than we do. But my personal theory on this is that, well, I think since we've committed divine treason, and you're probably noticing these frog things are already a lot easier to finish off since that upgrade. Since we're guilty of divine treason, and also those things have changed color now, just like Pit has. Since we're guilty of divine treason, the punishment is actually death, which makes sense for treason. And, well, God is also an infinite being, so the death of a finite sacrifice, like an animal, can never overcome that. We need a price paid big enough to overcome that. And in this case, that would be God. This item I got, when I get free life bars from max, it's a longbow, which will shoot a lot further than the dinky little bow I've got right now. So what happens? God Himself pays the price for us in Christ. That's one reason the deity of Christ is so essential, because without that, the price cannot be fully paid. Well, that was a bad start. Now, this does not mean the animal sacrifices in the Old Testament were entirely useless. Certainly, they could never bring about forgiveness, but they had their point. The point was to show how serious sin was, and it wasn't just giving up an animal in your house. Animals represented the economy in many ways. They were food, they were clothing, they had reproductive value, everything. Giving up an animal was giving up a substantial part of your income. I mean, you think of something like, say, sacrificing a bull. If you have 10 cows in one bull, you can get a whole lot out of that one bull, ultimately. But on the other hand, if you have one cow and 10 bulls, you're not getting nearly as much. See, platforming is exceptionally dangerous here. Thank goodness. And we should get the longbow here. After all, one bull can inseminate a whole herd of cattle, but one cow will not do as much with 10 bulls. So sacrificing a bull especially, see, did a whole lot. It cost you a lot. And every time also, the person making the sacrifice was supposed to realize the truth every time. That was supposed to be me. I should have died that death. So, in my position, Jesus takes takes the cross for us that we should have deserved. We did deserve. These are the worst enemies in the game. They don't damage you, but they steal your special items. And you either have to go through a trial again, or you buy them from the black market rooms at an exorbitant rate. So we're going to try to avoid those entirely. Yeah, I would rather get hit with something that deals me damage than touch those things, because damage you can recover from easily. So Jesus takes for us the price that we could not pay on our own. Now, I'm not going to say this is a hill I'm willing to die on or anything on my stance on the atonement, but it does work. We are in debt to God because of our sin, and Jesus pays the price for us. You really don't want to kneel down on the ice to block the Yeti's shots, because if you do, there's a chance you can fall straight through, and that's a game over. And you have to go back to the start of the lever. So, let's talk some about interpersonal relationships with this. Sometimes people say, well, I can forgive someone, and I don't require a death for it. Why does God? Well, part of our problem is we often think of God as if he's just a bigger form of us, and he's not. He's the king. He's not just a good being, he is goodness. To go against him is to go against everything true and holy in the world, and he's the ultimate judge. If he says what you did doesn't matter, he's in essence saying he doesn't matter. We can forgive one another because we're not as big of a deal as he is. This is one reason I don't think the Muslim system of forgiveness really works as well. Because as much as Muslims think that Allah is so glorious, which they do, saying that just forgiveness comes simple without blood being shed at all, really lowers the concept. Gotta be super careful with my jumps here. You know, I have no idea how anxious you can get with a jump in this level, because you go down there, and it's back to the start of the level. So by the way, if we finish World 2 here before the top of the hour, well, that's going to be it until next time, but if we have to go extra to finish World 2, which I don't anticipate, then we'll do that. Yeah, I'm going to let that thing go for now. For our interpersonal relationships, yes, we can forgive easily at times. Not always easily, but we don't require a sacrifice on our end because we're just regular people. But we should realize forgiveness is taken very seriously in the New Testament. When we're told about it, we have Jesus, for instance, in the Lord's Prayer saying, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors," and says, "If you do not forgive one another their sins, your Father in heaven will not forgive you your sins." And as C.S. Lewis says, there's no indication that he's not serious in what he says. Okay, I'm not going to take any chances here, so I'm going to buy a feather, which can save you if you fall one time. And then you have a parable of the unforgiving servant, where he's forgiven a debt that there is no way he could ever repay, and then goes out and frauders someone who has a much smaller debt to him. Forgiveness is serious, and if you have been forgiven, you owe it to yourself to forgive someone else. And if you don't forgive, you can't seem to forgive them, odds are you don't really realize how much you've been forgiven. And nighttime has fallen on Angel Land. I don't remember entirely, but I think it's nighttime for the rest of the game here. Because while this is the overworld, the next world is the sky world. And I think all the stages are at night, but I could be mistaken. We'll find out next time. Some of you might think, okay, Nick, you're talking a big game about forgiveness. Have you done it yourself? And the answer is yes. Now, note when I say this, forgiveness doesn't mean you go up to a person automatically. Sometimes you can't do that. You might be separated by distance, for instance, or it might be physically dangerous even for you to go up to someone. And then, of course, sometimes the person you really need to forgive might have died. And if that's the case, you can't really go up to them and ask forgiveness. But for me, the obvious person that I would struggle the most with forgiving would be my ex-wife. Because, bluntly, No one has done something more hurtful to me than what was done to me in divorce. No one. And I had to make a choice about that. And I resolved that I was not going to live in anger or hostility. Because not only does it not do any good me, but if I do that in essence, she is controlling me even still. She wins the game in the end. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And one of the philosophies I chose to live by is one that the best revenge you can get is a life well lived. But if you live your life successfully, with joy, try to at least, you're winning. Now, when that one gets active with 4 life bars filled up, it forms a little rotating shield around me. Let's make sure we avoid the thieves. I'm pretty sure there's some more on this level. They also exist in Skyward, but truth is they're much easier to avoid there. So, have I forgiven? Yes. But I'm going to add this caveat with this. She has not come to me in any way, contacted me in a way that said, can you ever forgive me for what I did to you? And personally, I don't think for the most part, I think it's important that you let someone come to you in so much as you can and let them ask you first, because in some ways you are giving them the gift of repentance. If you don't do that, you're kind of robbing them in a way. Let's get some more health just in case. And I think you should give him a chance to come to you first. Sometimes that's not always feasible. Sometimes you might have to make a public statement, like in a courtroom setting where that's happened. But generally, I recommend you let them come to you first. We'll wait until this gets down, because those things, they don't just look painful, they are painful. Now, having said that, does forgiveness mean you automatically trust the person again? To this, I say no. Forgiveness just means both of you recognize they did something wrong. But trust can have to be earned again. You can forgive someone who abused your children. Doesn't mean you have to hire them to be a babysitter. Maybe you will eventually, but you don't have to. Doing everything I can to avoid touching those guys. Yeah, it's expensive, but you can never get too many health refills. I think you can get a maximum of 8 in this game, but either way, you get the point. But if you ever do get to a point where you can trust them again, that can be a beautiful thing. I mean, on my end, if if she came to me wanting forgiveness and wanted to try it again, seminary student here, we've got counseling on campus, I'd work for the counseling department and say, I'm going to have to get the go ahead from them first to show that you're ready, you're taking this seriously this time, because I'm not going to go through this again. But reconciliation, I think, is always a good thing if it can be done. You have no idea how tense these jumps can be. Yeah, I've linked an article here that I wrote on my blog several years ago about this called Will Your Murderer Be in Heaven? And I've included powerful demonstrations of forgiveness. So by the way, we're not going to be freeing any of the soldiers this time. And you notice my special equipment doesn't work in dungeons. That's just the way it is. Wait, I think it might work if I get health refills enough, but right now it doesn't. But we're not going to be freeing the soldiers this time because, frankly, the boss in this level, he's a wimp. Okay, I just can't believe that the boss is so easy in this level. And we're going to say that for a third level because the boss there is much more of a challenge to me. One commenter on that said something very good. I thought he said, right now, Stephen and Paul are worshiping Jesus together in heaven. Yeah, it's true. Paul was there with approval when Stephen was getting stoned to death. And together now, they are praising Jesus. And whenever that thing goes high, that's a benefit for us because it goes right off the screen. I've got those automatic health refills. I refill one thing, but oh, this is not good. Yeah, I know I took some damage there, but it's better than getting turned into an eggplant. Okay, we've already used one health thing now. Now, forgiving someone also doesn't mean you feel like forgiving them. How you feel is frankly irrelevant. Nothing in what Jesus says goes with forgive those who hurt you. Well, unless you don't feel like it, and then it's totes cool to not do so. You forgive anyway. And I'm not going to deny also that sometimes that forgiveness will be very hard to accomplish. And it might be something you do have to work through. You might have to have counseling, talk with friends, and get to the point you say, I want to forgive them, but I'm not there yet. But I'm working on it. And I think if you honestly go to God and say you want to be able to forgive them, He'll work with you on that. And part of that is going to be you need to come to grips with the sin you've done in your own life. That technically, whatever another person has done to you, however bad it is, you've done worse to God. And if you say you haven't, then you don't realize the gravity of what you've done. Because as I argued earlier, I think it was our last episode, every sin you commit is a form of divine treason. Treason's a pretty serious sin. Okay? Uh, most all of us recognize how important it is that we deal with treason. Not good. Even back in the last century here in America, we had, I think it was the Rosenbergs, who were put to death by us for treason. I can't even use hammers in this one. Try and see if he's gonna... Yeah, I'll take another one of those. And we need to find a clinic. Fortunately, you can only get cursed one time. Can't get a double curse. Once you're cursed with the eggplant, well, all you need to do is go see the clinic and get it together. Now, once it's removed, yeah, you can get cursed again. There. But forgiveness does not depend on your feeling about it. Our culture pays way too much attention to how we feel about things. And frankly, Jesus doesn't care in that way. He cares about what our actions are. If you don't feel like forgiving, well, you're supposed to forgive anyway. You don't feel like giving when you're supposed to give anyway. You don't feel like loving, supposed to love anyway. I often like to paraphrase what Jesus said my own way. He says, "You do good to someone when you feel like doing good to them. What benefit is that to you? Even pagans do that." And it's true. It's easy to do good to someone when you feel like doing good to them. It's when you don't that it matters. Yeah, I wish I could tell you all that I know exactly how to get through here every time, but I don't. Fortunately, what I bought in the shop there can help with that. And now that I've done that, we're going to go see if we can buy the last piece here. I'm not at all going to tell you also that forgiveness is going to be easy, nor am I even going to say that it should be easy. To say what's usually said things, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Christians are supposed to be unique, though, in how we forgive. We are supposed to love our enemies and pray for them. Now, I still have a mindset of prayer and forgiveness concerning my ex-wife, but at the same time, I don't pray about it anymore, not because it doesn't matter, but because when you do that so often, it stays in your memory, kind of, and it becomes much harder to move on past it. And this is something I even talked over with my pastor before making my choice on this whole matter. Because I wanted to make sure I was doing right. But mentioning her every night kind of kept her mind every night. Now, if you haven't reached the point of forgiveness yet, I do think it could help you to still mention someone every night in your prayers. And I'm not going to tell you also that therapy would be a bad thing here. No, I think if forgiveness requires a good Christian counselor to help you with this, then you do that. Okay, yeah, here we're at the boss room. Wait for those mushroom guys to move out of the way. Now this time the boss has 200 hit points. Fortunately, out arrows are at stream freeze. That means he'll take 67 hits. Huge draw. And what does this guy do to attack? Unfortunately, I pushed the wrong button there, but that's it. This is all this guy does. He just jumps around. He doesn't aim at you. He just jumps. He doesn't spit fire or anything like that. He jumps. That's it. And he jumps up high enough that it's easy to avoid being hit by him. Like I said, going for the soldiers to help you with this battle would be a waste. Now, it can be tedious beating him, but it is not a challenge. All you have to do is hit him in the head enough times. Yeah, if you can get that right under him most times, that's very helpful. Honestly, the lava does more damage than he does. So right now, we just have to hit him 40 more times in the head. As you can see, every time I hit him, he loses 3 pieces of health. But that's all I think I can really say about forgiveness tonight. Just forgive someone. If they hurt you, forgive them. Doesn't mean you trust them again. It doesn't mean everything's hunky-dory and everything again. But honestly, the one who will benefit the most from forgiveness oftentimes will be you. Be the bigger person. Release the grudge. Because holding a grudge does not help you at all. It does nothing to them, and it hurts you. One more hit. There you go. and that's the maximum health you can have. Like I say, I love the music in this next level, and the more of it. Now, next time when we come to this game, we're gonna finish it because World 4 only has one lever. It's straightforward, and believe it or not, it's pretty easy. Medusa is actually one of the easiest bosses. I think she's even easier than Hydra is. Dies a lot quicker. People, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and please become a supporter on Patreon. You help me so much if you do that. And try to forgive someone who's hurt you just as much as Jesus has forgiven you. And if he hasn't forgiven you, if you haven't repented and come to him, why don't you take care of that? And you can reach out to me if you want to know more about that. So next time, I'm Nick Peters, a gaming theologian. I affirm the virgin birth, and I will see you later.